In America's Gulf Coast region, where grounded oil tankers are being broken down for parts, Naylor, a teenage boy, works the light crew, scavenging for copper wiring just to make quota, and hopefully live to see another day. But when by luck or chance he discovers an exquisite clipper ship beached during a recent hurricane, Naylor faces the most important decision of his life: strip the ship for all it's worth, or rescue its lone survivor, a beautiful and wealthy girl who could lead him to a better life. Here is a preview of Shipbreaker by Paolo Bacigalupi. It was a finalist for the National Book Award, and it was the winner of the Michael L. Printz Award for Excellence in Young Adult Literature. Naylor clambered through a service duct, tugging at copper wire and yanking it free. Ancient asbestos fibers and mouse grit puffed up around him as the wire tore loose. He scrambled deeper into the duct, jerking more wire from its aluminum staples. The staples pinged about the cramped metal passage like coins offered to the scavenger god, and Naylor felt after them eagerly, hunting for their dull gleam and collecting them in a leather bag he kept at his waist. He yanked again at the wiring. A meter's worth of precious copper tore loose in his hands, and dust clouds enveloped him. The LED glow paint smeared on Naylor's forehead gave a dim green phosphorescent view of the service ducts that made up his world. Grime and salt sweat stung his eyes and trickled around the edges of his filter mask. With one scarred hand, he swiped at the salty rivulets, careful to avoid rubbing off the LED paint. The paint itched and drove him crazy, but he didn't relish finding his way back out of the maze-like ducts in blind blackness, so he let his forehead itch and again surveyed his position. Rusty pipes ran ahead of him, disappearing into darkness, some iron, some steel. Heavy crew would be the ones to deal with that. Naylor only cared about the light stuff. The copper wiring, the aluminum, the nickel, the steel clips that could be sacked and dragged out through the ducts to his light crew waiting outside. Naylor turned to continue down the service passage, but as he did, he banged his head on the duct ceiling. The noise from his collision echoed loud, as if he were sitting inside a Christian church bell. Dust cascaded into his hair. Despite the filter mask, he started coughing as powder leaked in around the poorly sealed edges. He sneezed, then sneezed again, eyes watering. He pulled the mask away and wiped his face, then pressed it back over his mouth and nose, willing the stickum to seal, but not holding out much hope. The mask was a hand-me-down, given to him by his father. It itched and never sealed quite right because it was the wrong size, but it was all Naylor had. On its side, faded words said, "Discard after 40 hours use." But Naylor didn't have another, and no one else did either. He was lucky to have a mask at all, even if the microfibers were beginning to shred from repeated scrubbings in the ocean. Sloth, his crew girl, made fun of him whenever he washed the mask, asking why he even bothered. It just made the hellish ductwork hotter and more uncomfortable. There was no point, she said. Sometimes he thought she was right. But Pima's mother told him and Pima to use the masks no matter what. And for sure, there was a lot of black grime in the filters when he immersed them in the ocean. That was the black that wasn't in his lungs, Pima's mother said. So he kept on with the mask, even though he felt like he was smothering every time he sucked humid tropic air through the clogged, breath-wet fibers. A voice echoed down into the duct. "You got the wire?" Sloth, calling in from where she waited outside. "Almost done." Naylor scrambled a little farther into the duct, ripping more staples, hurriedly yanking extra copper loose. The duct's passage went on, but he had enough. He slashed the wire free with the serrated back of his work knife. "We're good," he shouted. Sloth's acknowledging shout echoed back. "Clear!" The wire whipped away from him, slithering through the crawl spaces, raising dust clouds as it moved. Far down the maze of ducts, Sloth was cranking away at a winding drum, sweat bright on her skin, blonde hair pasted slick to her face, as she sucked the wire out like a rice noodle from a bowl of Chen's soup ration. Naylor took his knife and hacked Bappy's light crew code above the place where he had clipped the wire. The symbol matched the swirling tattoos on Naylor's cheeks, the labor marks that gave him a right to work the wrecks under Bappy's supervision. Naylor took out a bit of powdered paint and spit on it, mixing it in his palm before smearing it over the mark. Now, even from a distance, his scratches gave off an iridescent glow. He used his finger and the remaining paint to write a string of memorized numerals below the symbol. LC 57-1844, Bappy's permit code. No one else was competing for this stretch right now, but it was good to mark the territory. Naylor gathered the rest of the aluminum staples and scuttled back through the ducting on hands and knees, skirting weak points where the metal wasn't well supported, listening to his own echoes and thumps and ringing taps against the steel as he hustled out, all his senses testing for signs that the ducts might break. And this has been a preview of Shipbreaker.